My name is Bob Hughes, and I'm involved with S3, and we'll introduce a few folks here in a minute, but let me tell you a little bit about S3, for some of you may not know. S3 was begun in 2017 with a mission that says to bring together needed resources to create a coordinated and comprehensive approach to ensure that homelessness is prevented when possible or is otherwise a rare, brief, and non-recurring experience. We wanted to provide folks with stability and shelter and services, and we've got several branches, and the ones we're involved with tonight are the housing advocacy. We need to find affordable housing in Lee County because we're a lot of folks that can't find a place to stay and are in all kinds of financial problems because of that. And we've got the mayor and we've got a council person here, so we're well represented. But again, the idea tonight is to get you aware of the lack of affordable housing in Lee County, give you some statistics. Tonight's purpose is not to necessarily come up with answers, but to inform you and get more of you involved in the process that we're trying so that we can get more affordable housing. So we'll get started. If you can see that the key objectives are to go from homelessness to middle income in Lee County, trying to understand affordable housing and what that means, and tell you what the affordable options are in Lee County, and determine tonight, start working on solutions and next steps, mainly the next steps. What makes housing affordable? No more than 30% of your household income is spent on housing expenses, and that includes your mortgage or rent, any interest or taxes, insurance, utilities. All of those things are part of your housing expenses. We know that if you spend more than 30%, it makes that the rest of it, the remaining income, the people can afford on repairs, school, medical expenses. You get over 30%, that becomes increasingly difficult. So we want to lead to better incomes. We want to get folks able to afford the houses that they're living in. Rates of homelessness in North Carolina, Region 7 involves those 7 counties. That's Harnett, Hoke, Johnson, Lee, Montgomery, Moore, Randolph, and Richmond counties. And we have the second highest homeless rates in the region. You can see that chart. We're up on the 1 in 500, 1 in 700 range of people who are homeless, the rate. So we don't turn out too well in that. Child homelessness. Now, child homelessness, McKinney-Vento is just a law that says you have to provide an education for every student. And so they have a way of determining what homelessness means. And it says that there were over 400, at the end, this was in the 22-23 year, there were more than 400 children in our school system that were homeless, defined as homeless. They didn't have a permanent residence. Might have been sleeping in cars, could have been doing anything, but they were designated as homeless. And you can see that the number has been increasing in current years. Now, go ahead.
This is where the math teacher takes over. I'm Ruth Price, and I'm a co-chair for the S3 Housing Connect. Bob's in charge of the housing advocacy group. But I want to make sure you understand what median income means. Sometimes we see in the newspaper the average income that the company's going to offer. That tells you nothing, okay? The median income, $66,200 in Lee County, means that 50% of our population make more than that and 50% make less. And I would say quite a few of those 50% less make much less than $66,000. So then when we look at the average middle income, which is about the 4th line up there, you see what the affordable monthly payment should be, around $1,600. Now understand, just like Bob just said, that means not just the rent is going to be $1,600. That's going to include their utilities, possibly taxes, insurance, that kind of thing, if it's a bought home. The rental still is going to be the utilities, cable, that kind of stuff to keep the household going. So that $1,600 there for a month is what somebody that makes $66,000 should be able to afford and still take care of other things that come up like medical, groceries, emergencies. You get a flat tire, that's going to be a lot of money. And then we start talking about the low, middle, and the low, extremely low, and hopefully y'all can read that, but let's look at just the 33,000, which is the second box from the top. And if your family of 4 makes 33,000, then $828 a month is what's affordable for that family, which includes utilities, which is unthinkable in this county, right? So, so keep that in mind as we keep going through this data. So wages in this county in 24, and you might notice it says average. That doesn't mean a whole lot to me, because somebody that makes a whole lot more than $48,000 is going to impact the average more than the median. So that's why I get a little bit upset about just saying average. But elementary teachers, child care, firefighters, this is the average income of those people in Lee County, just in Lee County, okay? Now, it could be that the chief makes heavenly days more, okay? But that still is going to be a tiny impact on the average.
One of the things you got to remember, that 37% up there is the amount fair market rental increase in the last 5 years. So rents average today are 37% higher than they were 5 years ago. So that adds to the cost burden that people are facing.
Right. So that $1,000 a month is supposed to be a fair market rental for these people that make that kind of money. Does that make sense? $1,000 a month, and that includes utilities.
That's a 2-bedroom.
Oh yeah, thank you. So middle income families, anybody that makes that median income, even if it's $50,000, maybe not 66, but possibly as much as $50,000, they're not going to be able to find any assistance in their rent. Okay, and we're going to talk about the types of assistance out there. And even so, many people are spending more than 30% of their income a month for rent and housing costs. And obviously, that's going to be stressful. It can add depression. It probably means, if it's like me, I was short-tempered with my children, short-tempered with the people I work with possibly. You just don't perform very well. And obviously in Lee County, the supply is low, but our demand is high. All right?
You can see from the chart that 27% of households in Lee County are cost burden. 44% of renters in Lee County are cost burden. That's 3,392 folks. Households a lot better, it's 19%, but overall 27% of our residents are cost burden. And that's pretty amazing. If you look at that 44% of renters, that's astounding, I would say.
So while we wait for the next slide, keep in mind this means that they are at risk, okay? They're at risk of losing their home, their shelter, and they're going to be homeless next week. That means they're hand to mouth. Y'all remember those days? I remember those days. I was a teacher.
Now this slide just says in the state we're kind of in the middle as far as evictions and that sort of thing. We're not the worst, but we're not the best. So, and again, 72 folks faced eviction from homeowners, and then 424 folks faced eviction that were renters. And I see those folks, I do some work at the CUOC, and I see those folks coming across my desk asking for money to get out of, so they won't be evicted because of their rent.
The pictures of the houses are from Lee County, but some of them they're not necessarily available, and they might be a little bit dated. So just understand, these are the kinds of houses we look at when we're trying to find housing for some of our people that are homeless. And that's throughout the slides, okay? Just understand that. And obviously, what we see now is, as of August today, there's 8 total rentals available, and we have, that are under $1,400. And we have a whole, you can go down the street and know that there's more than 14 people out there without a home, okay? This is kind of a rundown. Again, you see those houses. The first line of pictures, hopefully you can see those prices. But the White House or the duplex on the left, that's 1 bedroom in each duplex. And then the other 2 at the top of the pictures, those are both 2 bedrooms, and then you've got your 3 bedrooms there. So we'll look at the 2-bedroom list in the chart up there. And so a 2-bedroom house this year for rent is going to be $1,011. Again, that's your average. And then, and obviously it shows with the pictures down below because the 2 bedrooms there are about $1,000 and about $1,150.
And I emphasize again, and that's just the rent. That's not utilities. That's not any insurance or anything like that. That's just rent.
And also note the increase in price. In 2022, the 2-bedroom was $824, around $200 increase in the rent in 2 years. That's significant for our low-wage earners. And it's something we need to be cognizant of and empathetic toward. We need to be empathetic toward these people who are struggling to make ends meet. In this chart, I love art. This is the kind of art that I enjoy because I'm the math person, okay? So the yellow line is for townhouses. The red line is for single family, and they're existing now. And then the blue line, or dark blue line, is for the new constructions that are going up, and you all have seen them all over the county. And you'll notice it kind of stayed stable until around 2021. Of course, 2019 to 2021, COVID, not many people were moving around a whole lot. But at 2021, that's where everything started spiking. A single family new construction is approximately $372,000 to buy. I mean, I go down the street and they say new homes, $300,000 to $450,000. I'm going, who's going to buy that? You know, who's going to buy that? The people from Raleigh, I guess. Existing homes, $306,500. And then the townhome, $271. And of course, the townhome's going to be kind of small.
Yeah, this slide right here shows you that the cost of the home. I'm going to do what you did. If I can do that.
I like to move around. I always used to have to walk around my students'
The cost of as you can see, in August of 2024, the median sold price of a house was $319,974. Now, the cost has gone up 47% since 2020. Interest rates since 2020 have gone up 47%. So again, squeezed. But we did have, in the last year, a reduction in interest rates, 6.29% from 7.18%. I did an amortization schedule with 10% down on that house at that rate, and it was $1,780. Once again, no insurance, no taxes, none of that stuff. So $1,780 is what you would have to pay if you bought a house at that price today.
And also 10% down means that these people have $30,000 in their pocket that they're going to be able to put down on the house, and then, of course, there'll be probably $10,000 in closing. So they've got $35,000, $45,000 to even start and get the loan. How many of us have that, you know?
So, types of affordable housing: rental, private market affordable housing, rental or ownership, smaller or older homes, single or multifamily. Lots of times they're less expensive, but they need a lot of work, or the standards are not quite up to snuff. Manufactured homes, mobile homes or modular homes, tiny homes. There's been a lot of discussion about tiny homes in the last several years. in shared housing, where maybe more than one family is sharing a house. Ruth?
So we're going to talk a little bit about the support in the paying rent. And what we do know is that landlords, first of all, are not required to accept vouchers, okay? But vouchers are where tenants, knowing that they're only supposed to spend about 30% of their income, vouchers are, renters have to apply for it, and the vouchers will pay toward the rent so that the family does not pay more than 30% of their income. And that could be a long-term voucher or a short-term voucher. And if the family increases in income, then the voucher won't be quite as much. And on the other hand, if somebody in the family possibly loses a job, then the voucher, they have to submit an increase in their voucher amount as well. So there's different types of housing. We've got.
Oh, wait a minute.
Y'all see, you've seen Stewart Manor. Obviously, we haven't been able to use it. And keep in mind, Stewart Manor, when those people had to move out, that just increased our homeless population that much more, okay? We already have a short change on housing, and then we had to close down Sanford housing due to code, and it needed work. So in project-based housing, the whole facility, based on income eligibility as well as any rents adjusted toward that, that it could be owned by Sanford Housing Authority, it could be owned by a private corporation or a nonprofit. At any rate, the rent's typically based on the income of the renter and the eligibility requirements, okay? And you've got to keep in mind, you've got all kinds of people out here that are homeless. The ones that break my heart are veterans that are out there without a home. But you'd be surprised, school teacher talking to you again, how many 18 to 25-year-olds are homeless because they didn't have the money to get training to up their skills or up their degree, okay? And so they're working minimum wage. They can't pay rent. They don't have anywhere to go. And then, of course, we've got, mental handicapped or disabilities, physical disabilities and such as that. So these affordable housing rentals, permanent supporting housing, helps the people who have these disabilities and possibly are chronically homeless because of the disabilities. They can't stay in a house that has a lot of stairs or narrow doorways or something like that. But again, with the permanent housing, again, what they want to do is try to make sure that the resident doesn't pay more than 30% of their income. And these projects also can be vouchered.
So we just got this data, actually, this just hot off the press. So we wanted to share with you guys some of the Sanford Housing Authority numbers around the number of units that they have and the different programs that they have. So they have 3 programs that are specific towards housing units. These are project-based, so there are units on the ground. Somewhere there's an apartment that fits this category. So there is public low-income housing, and they have 172 units of those. There's multifamily low-income housing, and they have 176 units of those. And then there's some units that are restricted for individuals or families that are exiting homelessness, and they only have 5 units of those. And then they have housing choice vouchers, and as Ruth was explaining a minute ago, the housing choice voucher is the money kind of follows the person. So the person can access housing through a typical landlord. They get a lease just like anyone else, but that landlord has to agree to accept that voucher. And then if the landlord agrees, then they sign a contract with them and with the housing authority, and then the housing authority will pay a portion of their rent based on their income. So that's how the vouchers work. So they have 951 of those vouchers. There's 1,472 people on a waiting list for those vouchers. So that 951 are all given out. and there's still 1,400 more people who are on a list for a voucher. Now, they have to move through that list on an annual basis, so they may be working on a 2022 list or something before they can even get to the people who tried to sign up, 2 months ago. There are 354 people that are waiting for a housing unit. So they may also be on the voucher waiting list, but they're waiting for one of these units. Now, we also just got some hot off the press data from Brick Capital, because that's another housing.
Wait a minute. Carrie's got to answer this question.
Okay. All right. Carrie is the executive director or CEO of Brick Capital, so we'll let you tell about what you have to offer.
Oh, this is on. Hi. With Brick Capital Community Development Corporation here in Sanford. We do a lot around housing, from homelessness to home ownership, in fact. So we are involved in affordable housing one way or another. And so we have a number of programs right now that we're doing. Permanent supportive housing, as referred to before. This particular program is for those who are considered chronically homeless. And HUD has a very specific definition of what it means to be chronically homeless. And in summary, without giving you the whole list there of what HUD defines as chronically homeless, it's really for those who have experienced homelessness and lived in a place not meant for human habitation for a period of 12 months or more, is considered chronically homeless. So there is a program that we operate there at Brick Capital that is for getting those people who are chronically homeless into housing. So it is a housing assistance program, a rental assistance program, but it also comes with supportive services, meaning case management services, because we want to do more than just put a roof over someone's head, especially someone who's coming out of chronic homelessness. We want to make sure that they are getting the supportive services that they need to be successful in keeping and maintaining that housing, and be successful in getting a job and being a part of the community there. And so that's our permanent supportive housing program. There's also a program that the state operates. It's known as Back at Home program, and that is a more broad definition of homelessness, but you have to be literally homeless. So you might have heard the terminology couch surfing, for example. That's not literally homeless necessarily. And so that program we also operate as well with the state of North Carolina. Right now, we have 63 enrolled in that program, but we have 200 slots total.
Carrie, define slots.
Oh, slots. So, great question. So by slots, meaning that the state has given us enough funding, if you will, to be able to serve 200 households with that particular program. Same thing when it comes to the permanent supportive housing. You see we have 20 slots for that program. So this really means the funding that we have available for the rental assistance especially is what we're referring to. And then Brick Capital, we're also a property manager ourselves. We currently have 26 units. We're about to build another 16-unit apartment complex of permanent supportive housing. We have most of them rented. In fact, that number we probably have the last one already rented out at this point, because as we talked about just now, affordable housing is hard to find. But we keep our rents at or below HUD's fair market rents, or FMR, as you saw up there. And then the last thing I'll say, just real quick, that's probably not on this slide, is we also, I mentioned, we help out with home ownership as well. So we are partnering with the city of Sanford, the mayor, and city council member Rhodes there at the city to help develop affordable housing home ownership opportunities here in Sanford as well. And so there's 2 large projects that we're working on right now with the city of Sanford's help to help out with the infrastructure of these large projects, roads, water, sewer lines, et cetera. And then we will be able to build 70 plus affordable homes for home ownership with these projects that we're talking about. So that's it in a nutshell.
Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right.
Okay, so the types of affordable ownership, and this is something that we want to project toward. So we want to keep seeing affordable housing increase in our area. It's got to be driven by our community, by our government leaders, and obviously the private market's got to help us out with that. So smaller, older homes, single-family homes, manufactured homes need to become more available, and they need to be up to code. They need to be safe. They need to be clean. We want to see the ability of folks being able to purchase their homes, so some sort of aid with down payments. And we know we've got Habitat for Housing here in town. You all support them. They're working very hard. They've got a house going almost every day, but unfortunately it's only one at a time as they can get help and money to do it. Land trust housing is where you own the land, but you allow certain types of housing to be on that land, but still keep the land as your own property. And then, of course, the subsidized housing development that we talked about earlier. All of this is something we've got to keep looking at for the future. And so we, of course, want to see the city and county working together. I was at the county commissioners meeting earlier this week and saw where the city and county are working together on a new grant that's been accepted. And so they're going to work on new elements of that as well. I could let Karen talk about that at some point if you all want more information. But we need to have a plan. We need to come up with data. I'm a data person. And with that data, being able to establish measurable outcomes, actually say that we're housing more people. How many more? You know, how many less do we have homeless? What are we doing with our chronic homeless population? What are we doing to help them so that they have the kind of support they need for whatever issues that are involved? So the community's got to be involved in that. And keep in mind, as community people in this town, you are affected by this. You might not realize it, but as citizens in this area, these are your neighbors. They're not people that come in from Chicago or Richmond, Virginia, or somewhere like that. These are your neighbors. And so you need to understand this is friends of families that we have known. So we want to consider different solutions. Before we get into this, did anybody have any questions or comments you want to add?
With the Housing Authority, the number, oh, goodness. Okay, I'm sorry. With the Housing Authority, with the choice vouchers, are we taking advantage of the foster youth to independence vouchers as well?
Anybody got an answer to that question?
Sanford Housing here, anybody?
I don't know what the population of young people aging out of foster care is for Lee County. In my head, it's probably about 5-ish a year, maybe on average. And so those are vouchers that you wouldn't have to pull from the housing choice.
So all we got was just what the Housing Authority gave us, those numbers. So we're not looking at any other kinds of vouchers. There are other vouchers in the community, right?
Well,
So
this is through the Housing Authority.
it is?
Yes.
So if it's through the Housing Authority, then it would be captured within those numbers, or else we don't have it, or they didn't give it to me. So I don't want to say no, because I don't really know. But I will say, since you brought that up, that there are other types of vouchers that we did not mention in the community. So there may be vouchers that you could get through mental health, through Trillium. There might be vouchers that you can get through various other kinds of channels that aren't strictly Housing Authority vouchers. So that's just another thing. But yeah, these are the things we kind of gathered because they're the biggest ones. I'll check on it.
Anybody else? Yeah.
On the brick capital slide, there was a large difference between slots and the participation. Why is that difference there?
That's a great question. That's because the permanent supportive housing program we just started in October of last year, and the back at home program that
Yeah.
showed the largest number we just started in January of this year. So we're starting to build up.
Okay.
That's a good question. Anybody else? We want to make sure we cover everybody. Okay, all right, so, sorry about that. I was looking too far.
Good afternoon, everybody. You were mentioning earlier about the low wages here in the county. My question is, with these low wages, has anybody considered where these people are working? I mean, you know, we're looking at low wages. I don't mean to be facetious, but I mean, some of these people can't even afford hardly to buy a loaf of bread at some of these places they're working. And then we're looking at these units that are priced way out of their range. We've got people, and I heard you mention earlier about some of these younger people not being able to get their skills up to par. Well, once they get their skills up to par, can you tell me where they're going to work? Because I'm trying to figure out, even if they get their skills up to par.
That's a question for our employers. Anybody in HR around here?
Actually, I'd like to throw that question to the Q&A. I mean, there's at the end, so after we finish the presentation, we're going to have some small group work where we're going to ask you guys to document any kinds of thoughts or questions and ask that you have for local government, for civic groups and faith communities, or for yourself.
Or for employers?
Well, I mean,
No, I mean, our companies,
yeah.
we see in the newspaper, I don't know if somebody's in the newspaper, but I get really angry when I hear that the employer says the average pay is going to be $70,000 or something. That doesn't tell you anything because 4 people are getting paid $250,000, and that's what makes it come so high.
So we identified these 3 areas because they're tangible, and we can actually build an advocacy agenda around them, right? So if the data comes back in after all of these meetings where we have multiple people that are saying the same thing about this is a thing that's necessary in our community and we really want our local government to address it in an XYZ way, then that gives us something to then go back to the local government and share with them the information that we have collected through all of these meetings. So this is our 4th meeting like this. We've met with over 100 people, probably closer to 150 by now with these meetings, and we're gathering your input in every one. And so we're going to pull that all together. I was going to say this at the end, but we were going to pull that all together and give it back to everybody who participated. That's why we're collecting your emails, because after we pull together everything in the fall, we're going to have a virtual presentation where we're going to share with you everything that we have learned from these groups where we've been having these conversations. And we're going to have another conversation about how do we move this forward? How do we make an impact in your community on these things that have bubbled to the top? So some things just feel so big and so out of control that it feels like you can't make a difference. But the reason we're gathering here today is because you can make a difference. But we can only really make a difference when we come together collectively and we have a collective voice that says we need something different. So thank you for that, and please write it down.
You're going to put it on the list tonight because we want it to bubble to the top, right? Okay, so like she said, we're going to have discussions about this, but here's some considerations of some strategies that have been used in some other areas, and some of it is Apex, some of it's Cary, some of it's, towns far away or whatever. But the idea is that we develop in the county or city some way to fund housing support, okay? Whether it's through grants or whatever. Any grant writers out there, we welcome you. We want to talk about the zoning strategies. We want to make sure that we're including affordable housing inside of where these $400,000 homes are, or at least somehow make sure that the lesser costing homes have the kind of safety, maybe sidewalks, lighting, the same kinds of benefits that the higher income people have. And we want to make sure that nonprofit create some way to pay the nonprofits for paying the housing developers. And Bob wants to say something else. And we want to support affordable housing developments annexed into the city limits.
Here's some more. Consider some of the following strategies that have been successful in other areas. Create a preservation project to assist in repairing naturally occurring affordable housing. Take the existing homes and update them and create a house that's livable. Create a land trust, research and purchase land for affordable housing set aside. Get the land cost either zero or very affordable, and it reduces the cost of the housing. Donate redevelopment lots to nonprofit developers through the city or county to do that. Cultivate relationships with affordable housing developers and consultants and funders. They're all here, so we might as well create some relationships with them. Some other things, provide technical assistance and work closely with local nonprofits in completing funding applications and meeting requirements. Provide upfront funding to support development costs prior to funding awards, and create a town-county-sponsored affordable housing advisory board with local residents and nonprofits working in this space. And this is kind of what we're doing with this, creating an advocacy group that can go to these entities and advocate for what we're trying to do to get affordable housing. How can you help? Join us through emails. We're going to be in touch with you. Join us and help us out. Meet with local elected officials. They meet every month. Don't be shy about going to see them. Do more research on your own. Get curious about affordable housing and what can be done to increase it. Attend council meetings and county commissioner meetings. Meet with agency leaders working with lower income individuals and families. There are many nonprofit organizations in Lee County that work with this population. And the more you get to know about them, the better you can help. Gather with others to create common agenda for affordable housing advocacy. Again, that's kind of what we're doing. Getting these meetings, finding the status of what's going on, and then determine what we want to do and how we want to do it. Will you take the next step to learn more, or the first step to learn more?
And that's what we're going to do here in a minute. I want to go to the quote that's after this, that Matthew Desmond says about eviction. Actually, Matthew Desmond's evidently been evicted before. Decent, affordable housing should be a basic right for everybody in this country. The reason is simple. Y'all note, without stable shelter, everything else falls apart, okay? So we're going to move on to Beth, and she's going to get us started on having conversations. If you're not at a table, how about, I think we've got enough seats that everybody could sit at a table and we could talk through with some of the folks in here.
So I did want to acknowledge that there's a website here. If you guys want more information, there's a resource page on that website. There's places you can go to. If you're in this room and you are actively seeking affordable housing, or you are struggling to pay for your current housing and you need some resources, I would encourage you to go to this website and click on the resources page, and there are a list of resources there, and so that can be of help to you. Most of the time when we've had these conversations, there are people in the room that have come after to talk with us. So I would also encourage that. If you want to talk with one of us, feel free to step up and chat with us when it's all over, and we can help get you connected if there's a need. We're passing out some paper right now to everyone's table. And as that's happening, I want to just first ask you again, if there are any final or follow-up questions. Is there anything that surprised you when you heard those presentations? Anything that anybody wants to raise or comment on or ask a question about before we dive into your small group work? Yes, ma'am.
With all the development here, is there a mandate for developers to allocate a certain amount of housing for low income?
No, ma'am. So that is called, that is incentive zoning, it's inclusionary, thank you. Inclusionary zoning is what that is called. It is legal in a lot of places. In North Carolina, there's a hairy line. There's a hairy line. I will say that there are ways in which it can be legal, but there are ways in which it is not. And so many municipalities just stay far away from it and say, we're not going to touch inclusionary zoning. It's too much of a fuzzy line, and we don't want to get sued. But there are some municipalities across the state that are challenging that, and they are creating policies around inclusionary zoning, especially when someone has to come and get a rezoning for something, that there can be some requirements around that. On the flip side, and one of the things that was listed up there about things that we could ask for of our local government is incentive zoning. So that means rather than saying, if you're going to build anything, X% of it has to be affordable. Instead of saying that, you say, if you're going to build anything and you want these kinds of concessions, then you will make these kinds of concessions. And those concessions we would like to be affordable. So there's a negotiation process. And that gets especially, it works especially well when there has to be a rezoning for something, because they have to come before council, they have to go before the town planning board and that kind of thing. And so there's an opportunity for a negotiation.
I'm relatively new here. I'm one of those new homeowners in town. But another question I have is about rent control. I have never lived in a place that didn't have rent control. Is there any legislation or anything on the table in Raleigh regarding that?
You're not from North Carolina, are you? I'm sorry, but no, ma'am, there is not. Dr. Agard, do you know of anything? No. I'm putting her on the spot, but she's, I know, right? Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. This is a state that has avoided those kinds of requirements, but I think the work that's being done in the local community can create opportunities that can expand. So creating these incentives, and then you continue to press on the state level, which I'd love to talk to you at some point while we're here today.
All right, so what you're going to do at your tables, each table has a paper that says ask for local government, ask for faith communities and civic groups, ask for yourself. So I'd like you to spend some time at your table talking about, and somebody please record for your table on this white paper, talking about what would you like the ask to be of your local government. What are we asking of our local government when it comes to affordable housing? What are we asking of our local government? And just bullet down your ideas there. If you need more paper, we got more paper. So just bullet down your ideas there. And then when you get done there, just move on to the next one. I'll be walking around and looking at kind of where people are, and at some point I'll say, if you haven't gone on to the next one, kick on over. And then so I want you to consider, what can local faith communities and civic groups do to help support the community around affordable housing needs? So what is your ask for local faith communities and civic groups? What can they do, and what would you like that ask to be? And then y'all know what the last one is, right? What are you going to do? What's your ask? What's the ask for yourself, right? And so I would like you to document a few things that you feel like you might be able to do, you or your family, okay? And then we're going to hopefully have enough time that we can have some quick conversation and just kind of shout out some of the things that you guys talked about. This is really critical. Like I said before, this is where we're gathering this information from all of the different conversations that we're having, and we'll be pulling this together, and we'll be reaching out to you for a meeting that we're going to have in the fall, probably September, October, to share this information back with the group. Feel free, go ahead and get started, and feel free to raise your hand if you want me to come by and chat with your table. All right, let's hear some of the things that you guys are coming up with. I'd love to hear some of the ideas that people are exploring at your tables. All right, you ready to go? All right, let's listen up. We're gonna listen to some of the things you guys are coming up with at your table. Here we go, right here in the middle.
Testing 1, 2. Yes, good evening, everyone. The first question, the first heading was ask for local government. We need accountability. Make it understandable. Break it down in plain language. Somebody made the comment, when you write it plain. Responsibility. Me being a prior veteran, I'm going to go ahead and put accountability and safety. Moving on to the next one, education for renter and home ownership, buying land for housing, and I think I threw some on there that for the faith-based communities and the nonprofits to actually partner together as an alliance and come up with some ideas on how can we actually write grants, and it's no big I and little u, but it's us, and that way we can secure land. I have a pastoral voice. I heard somebody say that. All right. To work together. We can do so much together than apart. We have more things in common that we have differences. Last, ask of yourself, and my good colleague, the fire starter, is not in here, so she said to be more present in the community. And I definitely am a strong advocate on that, to be more present and have a voice for the people that don't have a voice. Thank you so very much.
Awesome, thank you so much. And there's actually a lot of work, a lot of examples happening around the state and around the country of where local faith communities are partnering with nonprofits, or just kind of partnering with developers, partnering with folks to develop affordable housing. Some churches have property. They can use that property, or they can partner with another congregation that has property. And so you got two congregations working together. One's the support, the other one's actually got the property to give. Yeah, there's lots of creative models around how that's happening. Somebody else want to share what you got, what you're coming up with? You guys? Will you talk? Yeah.
Okay, so for the ask for the local government, we set incentives for new businesses to provide the adequate salaries that was mentioned. Bringing in those businesses that can increase everyone's income so that they, maybe they don't have to be in affordable housing. Maybe they can, move up. We're not giving them that option. More incentives for landlords to work with those that are impacted. People that have evictions, criminal history. Maybe we put sketchy employers, but maybe they DoorDash. Maybe they don't have a stable job. These landlords after COVID shut it down. They said absolutely no evictions. Don't care if it's 10 years ago. No criminal history. Don't care if it's 20 years ago. So giving those incentives also to the landlords to work with these people. And then we also said better education and acknowledge that there's a problem. There is a problem. There's no sweeping it under the rug. There's no pretending we don't have it. Sanford has a problem. So we also said acknowledgement. Ask for the faith communities and civic groups. We said being a bigger part of S3 and CE and things of that capacity, so that they can be in the know and know who to bring to the table, how to bring them to the table, and informing us and our groups that, hey, there is a problem in our community, you know, just having that connection. And then a little bit of beginning help. You know, they do give help with rent and things like that, but if somebody gets a job, how are they going to get their boots? How are they going to get their pay for their licensing or their certificate? Focusing more on stuff like that to improve the community, and not so much let's make hygiene kits and give them to the homeless, which is great, but there are other things that can be done. Ask for ourselves. We said focus on solutions and less talking. If we're going to talk about the problem, let's also talk about a solution and stick with the solution. And then advocacy, we said the same thing, speaking up, advocating for what we need and who needs it, and fighting through it, even if it gets uncomfortable.
That's awesome. Thank you. Anybody else?
The first one was hard for us because other than Emily, we're all local government employees. So we had to act like we weren't, okay? But we did have an ask of the state government. Because we have Thomas here who has all the technical capacity for how to deal with the local government, we cannot do a lot of the things here that you're talking about with negotiating with developers and set-asides, and we need state government to do enabling legislation to allow the local government to be able to do that. And we cannot do it at this point because there is no legislation for that. So when you talk about yourselves, we talked about communicating and lobbying elected officials to help make it more easier for local governments to work on initiatives that would help affordable housing. Upzoning, which means increasing the housing options permitted in the zoning districts. I know the city is working hard on that. Tax incentive for developers that are willing to build true affordable housing units locally. Spaces that allow for safe congregate living, like a tiny home community where those that are within the community, their skills are built and developed. Leanne was talking about how we've gotten away from the family concept when someone had mentioned shared housing. So we talked about that. The ask for faith communities and civic groups are doing more things like we're doing here tonight with community engagement and education with resources, but make it equitable for all residents. Leanne had an example of resources and engagement that happen, but individuals in the room may not have the skill set or the education to understand what, when we throw out the terms and the terminology for things, they may not understand what that means. But making sure we educate everybody in the room so that everybody is on a level playing field for understanding what we're trying to do. Creating space and opportunities through dialogue, connecting with grants and funding sources for the programs, and skill development for those who want to write grants to help for this initiative. For ourselves, we talked about education and advocacy, volunteering at churches and civic groups, and like I said before, communicating with our elected officials.
Thank you, Karen.
Hello. We have as for local government, it's what's affordable housing and what's it defined as for Lee and Harnett County. That goes for like renters and new homeowners. What's a good rate for four-person family? It varies, like as far as you go to Lee County. If you go to Pendergrass, it could be like $1,100 apartment, and they can jump all the way up to a $1,600 apartment. The difference is across the street. The difference is a walking distance. Another thing is for a tax break for people who are renting out the houses, right? So I understand what you were saying. You can't do the tax breaks. You can't do like a state withholding tax break because that's legislative. I understand that, but you do still pay property taxes, right? And you still pay property taxes for the county. You can do an incentive like that. There's like a number of ways we can do it. A lot of people in here are in the older communities, right? I understand that. So you guys have already paid your debt to society, and I completely understand that. So why don't we have a community for older people, for more people that need help, you know? It says local homeless people, homeless people are about to go homeless, people are couch surfing. The elderly people are on a fixed income. They prices go higher, they don't go lower, you know? So help out the people who helped us, you know, they raised us. Ask for faith in communities and civic groups. Childcare for working parents, all right? So like, yeah, we have a childcare voucher in the state of North Carolina. I mean, I've used it, my family's used it, but do you guys know how like long the waiting list is? It could be months, it could be years, all right? So I'm asking for the communities, like a lot of these people are retired, they do need a little bit of money, right? What if we made some sort of like affordable childcare for the older people who need a couple extra dollars, can raise some good kids with some good ethics and good morals, and being around the church, you know, it's very straightforward. It's good ethics, good morals. Ask for yourself. We didn't get that far. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I love the way you guys are thinking. Like, y'all are getting into it. This is awesome. This is good stuff. Would you guys share?
I don't like microphones, but I love that idea of the affordable childcare because I've worked in childcare for like the last 10 years. And when I first moved here, I actually worked at a place down the road on Hawkins, and I only made $10 an hour. And I was the only person in our house working to pay rent. But there are a lot of elderly people out there that have retired from that field or retired from education that do need additional income. So that's a great idea. I actually have a question for Capital, because I have an application with you guys, and I've been working with somebody to get a down payment assistance toward a house because my husband and I have to move, and we have nowhere to go. We can't afford the houses on his income because a lot of the new builds around us, especially outside Sanford, are going for $2,400 a month. So actually, a lot of the lenders that we have applications with have told us not to work with you guys and the CPLP loan because it's so hard to obtain, and you don't get an answer until you've done your due diligence and paid and gone through the underwriting, and then you get an answer, and then you possibly lose that house option. So then you have to start all over again.
Is that something you want to respond to? You want
If
Go
I
ahead.
can.
Please.
Yes, great question. So what she's referring to, just briefly, the state has a down payment assistance program that you can get up to $50,000 in down payment assistance. There's certain thresholds and requirements in order to meet that requirement there. And you mentioned CPLP, which is the name of the program. It's Community Partners Loan Pool. We are that community partner here locally in order to help people with that down payment assistance program. I can't speak to your specific situation. If you're not getting much traction, I am happy to step in. Our housing counselors who we have on staff are the ones that help out with that program. If you're not getting any traction with them, I am happy to intervene to get things going. Because you're absolutely right. That program is great. It's one of the only ways that homebuyers can afford a house these days. That $50,000, by the way, it's a second mortgage, if you will. It's a zero payment, zero interest loan, but it is there. That's kind of attached, kind of behind your first mortgage is the way that works. So maybe we could talk afterwards, and I'd love to step in and see how we can move things along. Or let me not say maybe. Let's talk afterwards, absolutely, because I want to make sure that something moves forward with you on this. So.
Okay, anything else from this group?
No, we were kind of touching on taxes like they were too, but I think we got to a standstill.
Okay, so adding on to the taxes. Awesome. Would you guys like to share back here? Who's doing it?
Yeah, I think most everything that has been discussed was kind of covered at this table. Some more options for and I kind of miss this part. So anyway, for public transportation, I'll speak personally on that. I work in Raleigh, and I would love to be able to walk to the train station, because I could walk from my house to the train station and from the train station to my office in Raleigh. So I know I will be retired before they get all that done, but but I also see the traffic on US 1, and I don't know who else travels US 1. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. So there are people moving from Raleigh to here to work and moving from here to Raleigh to work every day. So if one of the things that we did talk about was the industry and business in Sanford, that the example that was used was 18 mattress stores and nothing else. So, I'll kind of cover 3 parts on that. Is that, we need to support local businesses, we need to shop local, and we need to support local industry. And this might have been mentioned. I'll admit I don't pay attention all the time, but if the businesses have incentives to come here, those incentives should be towards the average worker, not just tax breaks for. We won't mention that company in Chatham County that is getting lots of breaks that might not ever come to happen. But the incentives should be after the fact, not before the fact. You give me $100, now I have no incentive to do what I said I would do. And if that $100 only benefits the top 2 or 3% in the company, it's not much of an incentive for the community. So I think if we can rework some of those incentives, and I don't know what they are, and they may be there, so, or take better advantage of them. But the other thing is, as churches, we need to be more educated and more involved. And we also need to work to restore the family unit, because most, in my opinion, what I see is a lot of the affordability of housing is not necessarily the cost of the housing, but the ability of the family to pay for it because they're single families. And that goes back to us as church leaders, as community leaders, and family, to keep the family intact and also hold each other accountable to get jobs that we can actually support ourselves with.
I like the way you're bringing in the whole idea of industry and, economic development as a part of an integrated with affordable housing work. So they absolutely go hand in hand. A couple of other things I see here is living wage and improved zoning and incentives to restore some of the vacant dwellings. So those are just a couple of other things that hadn't been mentioned somewhere else. Have you got some things that you would like to share?
For local government, incentives from or for developers, accessory dwelling unit legislation, real estate sales commission control, don't tear down unless replace the housing, use empty commercial space for housing, for faith communities and civic groups, vote, everyone Democratic, tiny house community development, and ask for yourself. Get information like where did people from Stewart Manor and Prince Hotel go? Speak to friends, family about affordability. Understand cultural impact of home rental versus own choice. Support new Warnham homeless housing building, and support businesses who pay good, fair wages.
All right. Excellent list. Did you guys speak yet? Anybody? Anybody here want to share? We've heard from these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask for local government. Mobilize and encourage progressive leaders to run for office. More intentional city-county planning to increase. Recruit higher wage employers. Invest in economic infrastructure. Develop more Habitat for Humanity homes. Mobilize volunteers to rehab, preserve current inventory, build new homes. And what came out of that discussion, there's a lot of skilled labor right here in this town. People that can do the work, and people who are unskilled who will be the backbone to help out. I call it a habitat-like movement. And offer lots and land to, what's AH? Affordable housing developers. Yes, ma'am.
Acts for faith communities and civic groups. Increase partnerships with local government and city. Increase partnerships with Habitat. Down payment assistance. Land trust, especially larger congregations with land. And ask for yourself. Because if you don't ask for yourself, you won't get it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for participating. I do want to make a quick acknowledgement. I think it was this table back here that mentioned learning more about what happened with people from the Prince. And I will tell you from my work with the S3 group, it's a whole group of homeless service providers that come together, that a number of them came together and they worked household by household to help move people into housing. So there was a lot of research done on the ground to find landlords who would help move those folks into housing. Now, I'll tell you, there's a real struggle. That's another thing that we've heard consistently, is that even if you have a voucher, even if you have a caseworker, you have somebody working for you, helping you, it's very difficult to find the landlord that will accept that payment, that will allow that move. So there's a lot of nurturing and cultivating of relationships that are happening there. And absolutely, I think I heard someone else say, do more around landlord incentives and cultivating and supporting landlords. Y'all have some fantastic ideas. I can tell you that we have heard things from this group that we haven't heard anywhere else since we've been having these meetings. This is really, I can't wait to pull all this data together with everything else. I do want to let folks know that we were recording this tonight. We were recording it so that we could get this presentation. So we were only recording the presentation. We were not recording you. So this is a church, so they know how to do that and record the people who were up on the stage. So I just want to let you know that. If we have faces that are recognizable in that, we will blur you out. So this is really about us trying to have the recording so that we can have it for the future, since we've done this 4 times now. We're getting it down. Any final, we're kind of past time, but.
Sorry, yeah, I just want to add one thing if possible. And I don't know if everyone can hear me. Sorry, yeah. So I'll just add, I'll just add one thing. My name is Thomas. I'm a zoning administrator with the city of Sanford. And someone mentioned ADUs over here. Can't remember who. So the city of Sanford recently updated their UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, and that's the land use regulations, book that we have to go by. One of the many changes that we made, though, that was kind of staff initiated, was legalizing ADUs, or allowing ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in every residential zoning district. So that is allowed by right. You wouldn't have to get a special use permit. You wouldn't have to rezone your property necessarily. So if you're an RA out in the county, or if you're in what is now going to be UN6, but it's formerly known as R6, you're allowed to have an ADU, one accessory dwelling unit. So everyone know what ADUs are? Like a mother-in-law suite or something like that. So one of the other things that was done, I know the rant covered it, was zoning map changes, right? Where we expanded what is now called UN6, Urban Neighborhood 6, to larger parts of the downtown area. So think of 1st, 2nd, 3rd Street and beyond. Think of the downtown Jonesboro area to allow UN6, or to rezone certain areas of the downtown to UN6, and that allows for single-family homes, of course, but also duplexes and townhomes are permitted by right, so you wouldn't have to necessarily go through a public hearing process to do higher density infill development. Not high density, you know, there's still multifamily 12, which is another zoning district we have that allows for 12 units per acre, but for UN6, you do have a lot more housing options in the downtown area. So I know I'm running late, so.
You are. Thank you. Thank you so much. If anybody wants more information about that specific stuff, I'm going to point you to Thomas, and he's going to be here for a couple of minutes to talk to people if somebody come up. Yeah.
I'm the only Thomas in the planning department.
He's the Thomas. There you go. So you could also call him at the planning department. Am I tagging with you? I'm tagging with Ruth. Thank you, guys.
I want to thank Beth Bordeaux. She's with Partners for Impact. She's our consultant with S3. I want to say again that our S3 group, there's the website, we meet on the second Thursday of every month. The coming month is at First Baptist Church on September 12th. But you can find these things out if you go to our website. The other thing, Beth comes to town 3 or 4 times a month to help us keep us moving. We appreciate so many people, Ms. Rhodes, Dr. Agar, do you want to say anything?
Won't take too long. It's just great to come to the city of Sanford. I've talked with Tradell several times, and Brick Capital is one of the agencies that is a partner agency for the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness. And so we're setting up listening tours, so I hope to come back to Sanford and have other conversations about the great things that are happening here and how we can be a better partner for this local community and the things that you want to accomplish for housing justice here in Sanford and in Lee County. So it's great to meet you, Ruth and Bob. Fantastic. Is that right? Yeah, great. Thanks so much.
I want to thank Manna Church, too. This was a great venue. They were very cooperative, and we appreciate it. We told them we may be back, so we thank you very much.
So thank you to everybody for coming. You will hear from us again. Emails will be going out once Beth and Tradell kind of pull all this information together. We will be collecting those Post-it notes that you've got on your table so that we make sure we didn't miss anything. I tried to take notes, but I'm not a good secretary. Thank y'all for coming.